Hey guys, this is a quick update on PewDiePie's situation with the Wall Street Journal. In my last video about Felix, I presented the theory that print media was using him as a means of attacking YouTube as an advertising platform. Long story short, they threatened YouTube and Disney, who in turn back out of associating with PewDiePie in any way to protect their image. And from there they go on to paint a picture about how terrible a place YouTube is if you're worried about brand safety, which advertisers and the brands they advertise are. Now, there are still more ideas I want to share about this one, but for right now, I want to talk about what was confirmed by Felix the other day. You see, I figured that the journal most likely went after all of Felix's sponsors, but Disney and YouTube were the only ones who buckled under pressure. I was tipped off to this by the article on Felix that was published by Polygon of all places. They reached out to one of Felix's sponsors, G2A, who responded to them with a very measured and practical response. This raised massive red flags to me when I read it. Not because of what G2A said, but because of the fact that the Wall Street Journal didn't include anything from them in their first article on Felix. I debated with a few people about this, and while it was plausible that maybe G2A didn't respond to them at the time, there's still the fact that Disney and YouTube's responses were both publicized by the Wall Street Journal in the first place. As far as I can tell, it looks like G2A responded to Polygon within 24 hours of having been contacted. And if two massive companies like Disney and YouTube were able to respond quickly enough to be published in the article, I'm sure G2A could have responded just as quickly, if not faster. Judging by the response that G2A gave to Polygon, if the journal had contacted G2A for a response, then the only reason they wouldn't have published it was because it didn't fit the narrative they were going for. And come to find out, what Felix says in his video tells me that's probably what happened. Again, I didn't bring this up before because I didn't have any solid proof of it, but here's Felix telling us everything we need to know right here.
Let's get into the Wall Street Journal thing. There's one thing that I wanted to talk about that I didn't really do in my last video, which was the fact that Wall Street Journal went to the brands that I work with before they came to me for a comment. I know this because they didn't just talk to Disney and YouTube. It shows to me that they were just after making the strongest headline and the strongest story that they could get.
Now, from here, I want to address the other thing I claimed in my last video. Do you think it's possible that behind the scenes, the mainstream media have been pressuring advertisers to force YouTube to make changes that are harmful to content creators? Do you think it's possible that the mainstream media has been threatening advertisers with the possibility of them being publicly slandered for appearing alongside particular videos unless they make YouTube crack down on their content creators? I mean, realistically, the only power the mainstream media has over YouTube is through the fact that they know how to craft any narrative they want that borders on libel without crossing into that line where it becomes a crime. We just saw this with Felix, in fact. This one hasn't exactly been proven by Felix, but here, just listen to what he has to say, because it could not possibly be any closer to confirming this.
I didn't want to say this because it didn't feel necessary, but there wasn't just pressure to get my show canceled. Along with other brands that I work with that they reached out to, YouTube also had pressure to demonetize my entire channel, essentially getting me fired. Luckily, my videos does not go against community guidelines, so it didn't, but they tried.
When Felix says that YouTube was being pressured into demonetizing his channel, this is actually a really big piece of information. You see, there are only two ways that could have happened. Either the Wall Street Journal was pressuring YouTube by threatening them directly, which seems unlikely because they're not that powerful on their own, or the Wall Street Journal went around YouTube and threatened its advertisers into pressuring YouTube into demonetizing PewDiePie's channel, which seems like the most likely course of action they could have taken. And right here with this little bit of information from PewDiePie, I think we can say that's probably what happened. Now, at this point, only YouTube knows for sure, and even if we could prove that's what's happening right now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what happened a little while ago with the whole demonetization thing. And in all honesty, we may never know the specifics of what's going on, but what I think we know for sure at this point is that the mainstream media can and will pressure YouTube into harming its content creators, either directly or indirectly. And this is something that we must keep an eye on in the future. I personally have no idea how we can even respond to this tactic of theirs, but we need to send a message to YouTube that if they will be willing to fight for us, then we will do everything we can to fight for them. And with that said, we all need to stand up for other content creators here on YouTube. If the mainstream media is going to slander anyone, it doesn't matter if they're feminist, anti-feminist, a gamer, a vlogger, or even the people at YouTube. We must do everything we can to shut them down. If they're going to wage a war on YouTube itself, then we need to remind them who puts the U in YouTube.